All right, we are back with week. Ooh, we're back with more college football coverage, and in this one, we have the Week 11 recaps. Just to get straight into it, firstly, we have number 7 BYU at number 8 Texas Tech. And hey, from the minute I saw that this was a game for that week, it was definitely a must-watch in my opinion. Now, everything leading up to it made enough sense. Everybody you could think of was giving Bear Bachmeier praise for his performance in one of his recent games, saying that that was a breakout game for him as a true freshman. And I mean, the team as a whole, between, again, them being predicated on the rushing attack and also having a pretty sound defense, I don't think anybody really anticipated BYU to have this kind of start to their season. But here we are. And yet, the team they were facing off against is just as strong, if not stronger, maybe, if you ask certain people. Outside of a slip against Arizona State, Texas Tech has been pretty smooth sailing. Not all around. They've had a ton of injuries dictate their quarterback play. I mean, they just got Baron Morton back for this game while Will Hammond's out for the season. And while they have a decent running back group, don't get me wrong, especially with what Cameron Dickey's been doing for them as of late, their strength is definitely in their passing game. Called the air raid attack for a reason. They are certainly implementing that, especially when Morton's in as a pure pocket passer. And their defense, while they might not get as much respect, they're certainly one of the top defenses in the nation coming into this one. So it had the potential to be a pretty exciting matchup. And it's safe to say that from the defensive standpoint, early on you got a little bit of a glimpse of that. Now, I didn't watch as much of the early portion of the game, and in fact, really any of the game at all, unfortunately. But I did get to see a little glimpse of the action. By that point, both teams had stalled each other out on just tough yards, grinding out the entire time, keeping big plays to an absolute minimum. None to speak of to this point. And I mean, even with Texas Tech getting on the board first, well, that was simply because Parker Kingston, happening to be one of their more reliable wide receivers, actually muffed the punt, didn't have control of it, and Texas Tech was granted very, very great field position. But BYU held strong, forcing them to lose yardage, in fact, and settle for a field goal. However, as would be the case for most of the day, the Cougars did not find their footing on offense. Really, they didn't. You knew that they would try to implement the run, and that makes sense. But after a while, once BYU got behind schedule with this penalty right here, it just went downhill, at least for this particular drive. They had no choice but to settle for a punt in due time. And it was here that I kind of got put into the game live, and Texas Tech would make even more progress in this one. Now, Morton was definitely not getting the best protection overall, but I mean, when he was given time, he was still out here making plays. You had Eakin get over the middle of the field for a 37-yard catch to beat that BYU defense over the top, and for most of the rest of the drive, it would be Cameron Dickey getting them deeper and deeper and deeper into the red zone. Eventually, he would put the ball in the hands of Douglas, who drew pass interference on this Alexander guy as he's literally just trying to grab his left arm. That shit didn't matter because he had his right arm still intact, went right over him with the contact, reined it in for a touchdown catch, got all the requisite body parts he needed in bounds, and from there, the Texas Tech Red Raiders would hold a 10-0 lead. Now, at that point, I was unfortunately unable to watch the rest of it. But the way that Texas Tech kept that BYU offense boxed up, might not have missed too much context. Now, it didn't help that special teams wasn't in tune. I mean, to that point, you already had a muffed catch, and then to open up the second quarter, BYU, from what I'm seeing here, had a missed field goal attempt from the usually reliable Will Farron. So that kind of stuff, you're already behind early, and that shit just adds more insult to injury. But the Red Raiders just kept it going. Now, offensively, they definitely slowed down, but you could tell by the end of the first half, with them holding a 13-0 lead, who was in control of this game and who wasn't. And it didn't really change all that much in the second half. I mean, even with Texas Tech seemingly struggling to find their footing as an overall offense, BYU couldn't do much of anything themselves. In fact, an interception from Bachmeier led to another Texas Tech field goal, bringing them to a 19-0 lead at the end of the third quarter. And I'm just tracking it the whole time. I'm looking at it, seeing BYU doesn't have a single point on the board. And I'm out here thinking to myself, damn, did I speak on this too early? I thought this was going to be tons more competitive than this. But it just shows you how formidable Texas Tech really is. Maybe BYU, I don't know. I can't speak for what happened in that locker room before the game. But something tells me they just were not ready for that kind of onslaught. It would not stop. It got even worse as soon as Texas Tech, really at that point, earlier in the drive, they just decided to rely on Cameron Dickey bringing them down the field by himself. Because at that point, you'd already tired out that team. You'd already established ball control. From there, it was really your world. The ball was in your court. You could do whatever you wanted. And I guess the goal here was to just do a nice job of protecting the ball. I mean, one of the other longer plays here saw Morton literally dump a pass down to Dickey for a 24-yard gain on 2nd and 17. They were definitely trying to protect their lead, and with Dickey getting in for a 1-yard rushing touchdown, we've seen crazy stuff in college football. We've seen crazy stuff in different sports all the time, even with teams holding tremendous fourth quarter leads. But this would not be the case for this game. Even though BYU would get a garbage time touchdown out of vanity, if you will, with Chase Roberts getting in the end zone for a touchdown catch late in the game, it was pretty much over at that point. And Texas Tech, even though they would have preferred to have had a much better day offensively, they got a dominant 29-7 win against this team in Lubbock. As for the numbers, Baron Morton had 53.1% completion. Definitely underwhelming for him, but it's fine. 219 passing yards and a touchdown. His day was definitely marked by just getting absolutely lit up in the backfield, though. How do you explain negative 47 rushing yards? And Texas Tech, amongst the running back core themselves, ran for 198 yards combined across 36 carries and a touchdown from Dickey. But that contribution got completely tanked on the stat sheet because they did such a tremendous job of really taking advantage. I mean, Morton, again, just coming back from a lower body injury at this point. He's already not the most mobile guy in the world. He just had a field day. But I guess, again, it wasn't too costly to their overall success in this game. And that definitely matters. Virgil led the way in receiving for them with 3 receptions for 54 yards, while Eakin had 4 receptions for 52 yards, and Carter Jr. had 41 yards on 4 catches. As for BYU, Bachmeier would have 60.5% completion in this game with 188 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. But their game is definitely predicated on being able to run the football. They definitely gave Bachmeier some flack for having this kind of performance. But at the same time, he is definitely more of a running quarterback, and he is certainly reliant on the offense's ability to establish the run, to open up passing lanes and zones that he can exploit. Because one could question his ability to throw the ball deep. I'm not sure that's all there yet, even though he's probably had a few plays every now and then where you get some deep shots in. Fine. That had no chance of happening in this game when they combined as a team for 67 rushing yards and just 2.5 yards a carry. Now again, the Texas Tech defense is definitely no slouch. They are not to be fucked around with, and that is what makes this team, even with them having a loss on the board, a legitimate contender in the nation right now and for the CFP. It's not something that you usually see from any Big 12 defense, let alone Texas Tech. I mean, we know this was a team involved in legitimately one of the more chaotic college football games of all time when Mahomes was here facing off against Mayfield in Oklahoma. We remember that game. This is very much unlike them to have that suffocating of a defense. But here we are. And I don't think BYU scouted them hard. Like, it's kind of crazy to say that. Like, obviously, you're going to be looking out for some things. But they missed something if they just got walloped like that. I mean, they didn't even have to worry about the fucking tortillas being thrown on the field this time. Like, it was there for the taking. And, you know, maybe this is something that BYU learns from. It's definitely a humbling first loss. It's not like they haven't beaten really good teams this year, though. So I can't sit here and say that I wouldn't trust them to eventually shake back, but it definitely hurts them in the short term. Seeing as, you know, there are only a few weeks of college football before you have to worry about conference championships and then potentially CFP selection. If they can continue to weather the storm, I mean, they still got as good of a chance as some of the other top dogs in that conference. But it's going to be a battle. And next time they face off against a team like this, they better prove that they're ready. Because we're getting into postseason territory sooner rather than later. You cannot go out like this in that kind of setting. Roberts would have 61 yards on 6 catches and a touchdown, while Parker Kingston would have 5 receptions for 43 yards in this game. As for some defensive numbers, Glasgow had 10 tackles and a sack with 2 TFLs, while Rodriguez, one of Texas Tech's better defenders, and a name that's certainly been getting around national airwaves, had 14 tackles in this game, and TFL, an interception, and pass deflection. Wisniewski also had 10 tackles in this game. Credit to those guys. Again, good win, strong win for Texas Tech at home. Interesting to see if they can keep that rolling. I'll tell you, they are nothing to be fucked around with. Speaking of Texas-based teams, the next game on the slate, even though I thought it would have been a pretty interesting one to watch, despite all the injuries that they are facing, was number 3 Texas A&M at number 22 Missouri. Texas A&M has been a fucking mammoth of a team this year. The CFP rankings came out. They were at number 3. I had no problem with that. They have been rolling this year, albeit in some unconventional ways. But that offensive unit, the defense has definitely had their more suspicious moments at times. But that offense, between their dynamic receiving threats in KC Concepcion and Mario Craver, between what the running backs are doing in both Owens II and obviously Moss, but with Moss's injury, Owens II is going to see some more time, as he would in this game. they've just got everything clicking for them right now. And it seems like they can't be stopped. Missouri has been a formidable team at times. I mean, they've definitely given some of their very SEC foes a run for their money this year. However, it feels like the injury bug is just completely screwing them over. Now, their running back duo, as they would prove in this game, is definitely solid between Hardy and also this Roberts person. And they've got some decent receiving threats. But the tragic thing for them is that who the hell is their quarterback right now? And yeah, again, we get into these quarterback-centric conversations. It's not all about the quarterback. But at the same time, they're rolling into this game with Matt Zollers in his first career start. And as soon as I heard that, you could not expect too much from this game as a Mizzou fan unless from the very jump you establish Hardy and Roberts as true threats. And even then, would that really guarantee you a victory? You couldn't be all too sure of that. It's unfortunate. Now, I don't know if they would have necessarily won this game regardless. Like, Texas A&M has been that freaking good. But at the end of the day, they were already entering the season down Sam Horn, who was already a person that lost the quarterback competition in spring. So that sucks, especially if you wanted to rely on him in backup duty. Then you have Pribula, who won that battle, also get hurt in this season. And now he's out for the year. There are other guys that they have left. Like, if it wasn't going to be Zollers, you were rolling out somebody who was less experienced. Most likely. And I think they mentioned that at least one person in their quarterback room was a walk-on. And, like, you're not going to put that in the hands of that guy. Unfortunately. So it was already tough for Missouri. The odds were certainly stacked against them, but maybe they could find a way, right? Maybe they could find a way to make something happen. I'm not going to lie. Their defense definitely stepped up to play for a little bit. Definitely stepped up to play. They ensured that they could not have a dynamic tandem of running back play go down early. And they were also able to limit yards after the catch. Yeah, we're saying that as Craver is one of the top guys in yards after the catch, and Concepcion is a beast in and of himself. But they kept that to a minimum early on. They punted on both of their drives here. And they took advantage of Marcel Reed's propensity to be inaccurate as well. They got all over it early. And hey, they can say that for at least a good portion of the time, they didn't allow Texas A&M to do much of anything. But in those moments, you had to respond. And as I noted right here, with this statement right here on my notes, rough go for Zollers. Almost every time he touched the field, and up to the very moment in which he might have left it off of a punt, off of a potential turnover, you name it, we had to continue to repeat that shit. It just wasn't pretty, man. Now, again, like this drive right here, this first drive, they're backed up in their own territory, and Ahmad Hardy, as great as he is forcing missed tackles. The man had a 40-yard run on the first play, but they just stalled out. This next drive literally saw them go 3-0. Because that was going to be Texas A&M's thing here. If they could force Missouri to get behind schedule, which they did, is they only allowed Hardy to get a rushing yard on this particular play. Put the hands in the game of Zollers and let him show us what he's got. And that backfired tremendously for the Tigers in this game as they would be forced to punt. And then shit got started for the Aggies. Now, again, like, everything they were doing early was getting reversed. They got Owens II involved. They had Craver get out in space and get yards after the catch. Eventually, as they continued to drive down the field, one of their other wide receivers in Bethel Roman got a nice catch in the end zone for a touchdown just before the start of the second quarter. And I will say that, again, one could state it was a defensive lapse from Missouri with the way that they played them for most of the rest of this half. Again, outside of that, not much was bracking. Not much was going on for the Aggies here. Yes, they got a few big plays every now and then. Explosive plays are abundant with this offense. You're going to get got every now and then, but credit to Mizzou, for most of this time, they didn't break. They did not break. In fact, again, they made it their mission to make Marcel Reed somewhat uncomfortable. They got him in a third and long, very long situation, 3rd and 16, and he forces up in a heavily inaccurate throw Concepcion's way. They get into another drive later on in this quarter, and he just feels such immense pressure that they actually nab him in the backfield. You're not wanting to get Marcel Reed out in space and make guys miss off of scramble opportunities. They prevented that from happening 100% here and managed to come off the field, save their energy a little bit. But that aspect of things would change drastically. And it all took just one play. It all took one play. Now, their situation here was, hey, you are already right where you want to be, per se. Yeah, you will want to have points on the board right now, but you're keeping Texas A&M's offense at bay. You have a chance to go down and steal some momentum at home before the half. As long as you protect the ball, you're good. And they operated in that way. I mean, the first few plays were just runs for Roberts to take the pressure off of Hardy. And he did a great job of getting them in pretty good field position early on. It also helps that, again, you don't have to worry about an incessant running clock because it stops after first downs. They were cruising down there, at least from the start. And then, worst possible thing happened. One of their defensive linemen for Texas A&M wrecked the absolute shit out of Zollers to this point. Pummeled him down to the ground. And Brooks, a linebacker for them, I believe, that'll become very important in the overall context of this game. Man instantly recovered it and almost scored himself. But either way, not only do you give the ball back to the superior team in this case, but you also place them at just the 2-yard line in go-to-go territory when it was your chance to completely swing the momentum in this one. Now you're back on the defensive with very little to do in terms of resisting this whatsoever. And again, a matter of 2 plays, just like that, Texas A&M would take themselves a 14-0 lead with Emmitt Smith Jr., E.J. Smith, getting into the end zone for a score. And when they popped up a graphic of his face, you can tell that he's Emmitt Smith's son. It's not hard to see the resemblance there. But that's a different story for a different day. Tough break for Mizzou to enter the half, and even though they tried to get it close at points, it was all Texas A&M for the rest of this game. Now, they did themselves no favors by, again, getting in some compromising positions. Like earlier in the game, for example, they mentioned that Zollers' hand was being tended to. And again, that is when they showed the graphic of these quarterbacks. Like, you're already down enough. You'd think you'd actually try to go out on a limb and protect your asset. But, no, they still served him up to a very, very, very good defense. Literally licking their chops as soon as they saw him back there. It was just incredibly unfortunate. You start out that way, and instantly it just got bad. Like, yes, they did a decent job of preventing yards after the catch. Then they promptly allowed Casey Concepcion to get off of an RPO bubble and dash down the field untouched for a 48-yard touchdown catch. At that point, it was kind of a done deal. But at the very least, Mizzou could say that they played with some pride, tried to stay in the fight. Zollers would eventually lead them down the field with Roberts punching it in for a touchdown run. And despite a massive run on the ground, which was a savage play call from Elko, I might add, because it's 4th down here. And you're thinking that Texas A&M is content with where they're at, so they're just going to go ahead and punt the ball. They do line up to punt, only they dial up an impressive fake. They feed the ball over to the same Brooks person, and he just starts turning up and down the field, getting in some extra moves while he's at it, swerving right through the defense, and gashing a unit that decided to play as far back as possible because they weren't even expecting this to happen. They eventually get him, but not after a 48-yard run on the ground to convert 4th down and keep the pressure on. Credit to Missouri again, they would stall him out. They would force a field goal here. But Tom was definitely running out. They couldn't hold him off forever. Texas A&M, I will say, although I might have missed the context here, what initially didn't even appear to be a turnover from my view, they got themselves the ball back off of a Bethel Roman fumble. And if they manage to get themselves a touchdown here, this is at the start of the 4th quarter. Any number of things could happen, truly. Like, they would get a solid drive. But they would be forced once again because they just could not close off these opportunities. Rarely were they able to. They settled for a field goal, and right then, right there, in just a matter of 4 minutes, Texas A&M was right back at it, getting themselves a 21-point lead with, again, Owens II in the absence of Le'Veon Moss, and even then he'd be the second back anyways, just broke off for a fucking 57-yard touchdown run. Damn. Yes, Mizzou responded quickly with an Ahmad Hardy touchdown run. But again, this is not a time where you want to keep playing back and forth with the Aggies at this point. And they themselves, by simply running the football between Marcel Reed getting out in space and starting to burn them, between Owens II holding it down, and between Emmitt Smith Jr. doing his thing as well, with a few reps here and there, they ultimately got down the field, and Owens II would capitalize on yet another touchdown drive. The second that this happened, you knew that it was ultimately a wrap. And just a microcosm of how the game had been overall. I mean, they kick off routine manner, and Roberts, who had actually been playing well as a running back in this game, he muffed the catch too. And that sucks. Texas A&M, all they had to do was continue to take knees. They didn't feel pressed to do much of anything. And they would win 38-17 in dominant fashion. I mean dominant fashion. Like just an all-around balanced attack. Marcel Reed had 221 yards passing, and honestly, 69% completion for him. Probably one of the more accurate days he's had as a quarterback for this team. And 2 touchdown passes, along with 29 rushing yards on the ground. Definitely not half bad. And again, not necessarily, again, when you look at some of these stat watchers, might not necessarily be as eye-popping. But they didn't have to do all that much to force the victory. They let it come naturally to them. It was just that easy, right? As a team, they combined for 243 yards on the ground and 3 total touchdowns, led by Owens II getting 102 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground himself. As for their wide receivers, Casey Concepcion had 4 receptions for 84 yards and a touchdown, while Mario Craver had 6 receptions for 59 yards, and Bethel Roman also added 26 yards on 2 catches and the other touchdown. As for Mizzou, 31.8% completion percentage, 77 yards in this game for Zollers. Just 7 completed passes on 22 attempts. Now, again, it's not even something that you can roast him for. It's not. He is, I think he's a freshman. Again, making his first ever start in this situation. And while he'd gotten a little bit of burn, this Texas A&M team is on a completely different plane. Even if their defense might be a little suspect, that's the gauntlet you have to go up against in your first start as a collegiate athlete. Like, yes, it's definitely not great. But honestly, like, if you're going to criticize him about that, and I guess to an extent it might be fair, but you go out there yourself and try to go up against this Texas A&M team making your first collegiate start and see how you would fare. It would not be so smooth. It definitely looked ugly. And that's kind of the point here. Like, it's definitely not, honestly, there were a few things that he could control, of course, but he holds no blame here. None of it. Because if you're the team surrounding him, and again, the running backs understood, Roberts and Hardy, with Roberts leading the way in rushing yards, combined for 30 carries in 219 yards and 2 touchdowns by themselves. They understood that the best shot they had at winning this game was establishing the run to open up, I guess, different routine plays, gimme ones that Zollers could execute with ease. And even still, their efforts on the ground would prove to not be enough when it counted. The protection or lack thereof did him no favors. And when it comes to their action in the receiving game, Oleg Buddy had 3 receptions for 74 yards in this game by himself. All their other 4 players combined for just 4 catches in 3 yards. So I really just have to question, what the hell was everybody else doing? Like, there were definitely some plays where the cornerbacks for Texas A&M did a great job of covering up. At the same time, Again, maybe a few inaccurate throws, but there were definitely some situations where the wide receivers at that point, make yourself available. Why are you trying to go for all this elaborate shit down the field if you know that that is not a strength of your guy out there at this point in time? It's a little bit weird. And unfortunately, as a result, get blown out by 21 at home. But they can say that one of their defenders, Newsom, accounted for 11 tackles in the TFL in this game. So that's pretty solid. As for Texas A&M and this Brooks guy, 6 tackles, the aforementioned 48-yard run, and then the aforementioned fumble recovery. He just did it all in this game. And promptly, they decided to interview him in the postgame. Right after. Like that, hey, that's respect. That's respect. Maybe a name that might not have been known all that much. But, if that is something that he can keep going, and if he's a person eligible for, draft buzz anytime soon, hey, that's a person to at least be aware of now, keep an eye on for the future. All right, moving on to this game between Iowa State at TCU in Fort Worth. The chaos of the Big 12. Yes. Albeit in this game, a completely different way. Where do I even start? Now again, I think I got into, nah. Yeah, I might have gotten into this game in terms of watching it a little bit later. But even then, before I actually tuned into it live, this was chaos in a pretty unconventional way. It was a defensive struggle. I've been hearing that phrase a lot. Defensive struggle? This was the epitome of that. Neither team could crack the code. Neither one. Now, yes, Carson Hansen was the most consistent thing for the Cyclones in this game. Again, where the hell would they be this season without him? When you look at how they started it off with that win against K-State and what he's continued to do as a player for them, also with a metric that they mentioned later in the game as well. That just showed, he's legitimately been such a grand player for them. But everything else has got to be questioned right now. They couldn't effectively move the ball. And in between some inaccurate throws and also just a shit ton of drops, they couldn't do anything on offense. Is that really saying much compared to how TCU started this thing? Well, that's the problem. Hoover himself, on his first drive, capped that off by throwing an interception and actually led to Rocco Beck throwing a touchdown to Brummer from 23 yards out. And that would remain to be the advantage. I don't know why Iowa State tried to go for 2 in this game, but I don't know why they tried to do that right afterwards. Nonetheless, the score was still at 6-0. And we went on and on and on in this game. And again, between the rushing game being held up completely by Iowa State's defense on the part of TCU's struggle here, again, Rocco Beck just continued from one reason to another to be ineffective. It was definitely a struggle, to say the least. TCU on this drive, they tried to make some progress. They did, but no. He would be intercepted again. 2 interceptions in a quarter. Ooh. Oh boy. That ain't good. Yeah. Now, this is where I got into. You have them previously coming out of a situation where Carson Hansen himself, because he's just that damn reliable, okay, he picked up 4th and short for them. And then they got themselves into another one. While the play was great, one of their wide receivers in Brown, with a ball square in his hands, just drops it to the fucking grass. And at that point, they mention the graphic as they come back. 21 passes dropped by the Cyclones core, was at the time the second most in the conference. That trend would continue in this game. It did not stop there. It didn't. Even with the minimal progress that TCU would get, for example, having Hoover just fire in a pretty quick pass over to Rodgers to pick up a first down on this drive, it still wasn't enough for them because Battle has some butterfingers out of the backfield as well. And they had to get off the field. And we just went back and forth with this, really. Yet, with TCU forcing Iowa State into another tough punting position, they were able to get themselves on the board, having to settle for a field goal. But hey, in this climate, in this game, you'll take a field goal. And hey, they were running a little bit of momentum here. They got some good progress on the ground going, the Cyclones that is. But Becht would make the brutal mistake of testing Bud Clark in man coverage. Why the fuck would he do that? As soon as that happened, and you saw Skilton try to go for the ball, you'd have Bud Clark moss him, run his route for him, and get the interception to give the Horned Frogs the ball back in this game. Tell me how they fucked this up. Because you had the Man Jack himself with his strong hands do what he does best and just get extra yards with the sheer physicality of his frame down the field. They were also bailed out a little bit with a penalty. They're in Iowa State territory, deep in their red zone, with a chance to take a lead, let alone get some points. They did neither. Why, you may ask? I understand that you kick field goals at angles in college football. I get that. There was no excuse for me to watch as this man, McCashlin, live, missed from 25 yards out. I gave him the benefit of doubt. I didn't know they said 25. I thought it was a 27-yarder. No, 25. And you kick it right at the right upright. And it doinks off. And Sonny Dykes literally says, "Are you shitting me? You gotta be shitting me." You can't make that up. Like, yes, it's definitely getting into the winter season. You understand how cold and windy it's getting. There's no excuse for that. Sure, it was still warm enough in Texas. There's no excuse for that. There's just none. And it kept TCU off the board, and it would end at a 6-3 deficit. At the very least, they can say that they started off the third quarter well. And I mean, damn good. They controlled nearly half of the quarter by themselves. If Iowa State is going to play you that physically on defense, if they're going to ensure that you're keeping everything short, fine. Take what the defense gives you. That is exactly how this drive would end up going. And ultimately, those kinds of quality plays, along with Manjack being able to pick up another crucial fourth down here, it would open up some bigger plays here and there. You had McAllister get free for a 19-yard gain, but even that wasn't necessarily a deep throw or anything like that. You're just getting out in space, making some people miss. They legitimately tried to... It was a shorter pass, but they were so far backed off of McAllister. That's how you know he's a consistent threat for them. Even if he's had some weird games this season, the cornerbacks literally backed so far off of him. They were allowing themselves to just not get beaten over the top. But you are going to get carved up in the short game if that's what you're willing to do. And they didn't stray away from that at all. But you also had Dwyer, and this is a person who was also a legitimate threat for them on the outside. Got a nice little corner route into the end zone area, and he would haul in a nice grab for a 14-yard touchdown catch to give them a 10-6 lead. Why exactly would Rocco Becht try to test Bud Clark again? Now, this one is not all him, but the man was completely guarded up, and Brahmer, even in trying to catch the ball, he tips it up. Bud Clark happened to be in the right place at the right time, and there you go. Easy pick for him. And at that point, TCU's got a chance to stamp their foot down and seize control. And they would. They would. Yes, they were aided by a few different penalties here. But they legitimately could not guard McAllister to save their lives. And they also just got some stupid penalties in this drive as well. I mean, you already have Hoover picking up the first down. Why the hell do you need to hit him after the play? That was bullshit. The play was completely clamped up. You get a crucial stop on 3rd and goal from the 17-yard line. And yet, because you continue to grab people the whole time, you grant TCU an automatic first down in that situation. Brutal stuff. Along with some really good plays otherwise. And with offsetting penalties taking place, Battle on the ensuing play would punch in another 2-yard touchdown. TCU had an 11-point lead at this point. They lost their ever-loving minds. They lost their ever-loving minds in this one. Oh my gosh. Like, you've been playing that well on both sides of the ball for the past few quarters. And it's got to be brutal for TCU when you think about that, right? You get that kind of good work in. You fought that hard to make that kind of progress. And it all goes to waste because of some weird lapses. Now, yes, Carson Hansen is going to clearly do Carson Hansen things. You're not going to keep a player that great out of the game for too much time. But on a 3rd down, per se, as this would show, why the fuck are you allowing Rocco Beck to get out in space after you had already done a good job of forcing an incompletion on the play before? You let the man churn some more yards down the field, out in space, without any repercussions whatsoever. And a man who had literally completed like 7 of his passes on a number of different attempts in this game, now you started to allow him to settle in. But okay, fine. Yeah, Carson Hansen might have gotten the touchdown here, but hey, you stopped them on a 2-point conversion. They would still have to go back down the field and score a touchdown. Oh my gosh. Are you serious? You could hear a pin drop in the fucking stadium when this happened, and I didn't anticipate this happening either. But it is gotta be just your kind of fucking luck as a Horned Frogs fan to witness this team do all of that, get the ball back, go 3 and out, and then allow this guy in Florida, their return man, weave in and out of the defense to the point where there's just one man to beat. Punter couldn't catch his ass, and he gets a 79-yard touchdown run easily on the punt return. They would also get the 2-point conversion. And you had put them nearly in a coffin. Now you have to go back down the field yourselves and not only score a touchdown, but get a 2-point conversion. Now, granted, they had the time. It wasn't completely over and out of the realm of possibility for them. But you literally just wiped all your progress out. And then to make matters even worse, in virtually no time, even with them getting back-to-back plays for first downs, and should I say back-to-back-to-back plays for first downs. This 28-yard run from Payne, while he had definitely been doing that on the ground to them, this would prove to be futile. Like I said right here, he literally got too carried away. And Iowa State saw that shit. They exploited that. They got their hands right in there to jam that shit out. And all of a sudden, Cyclones had the ball back. In no time. From there on, outside of one Rocco Beck pass, it was all Carson Hansen at that point to continue to just grind down the clock, make TCU use their timeouts early, and give them little time, if any at all, to do anything on their next offensive possession. That was the game plan, and it made sense. Hansen, per a graphic they showed on the broadcast, was the first Iowa State running back since 2021 with 3 straight 100-yard rushing games. Last person to do that was Breece Hall. And he's in the NFL doing stuff. So what do you think Carson Hansen's capable of? But anyways, even with them stuffing him in the backfield a few times, the plan had already worked. Before you knew it, TCU was left with just 34 seconds to get 84 yards down the field. Or at least get in field goal range. Although, if you have McCashman out here missing 25-yarders, and what do you know? That if you really just had that in the first place, your approach would have completely changed down the stretch. Now, again, you can't play that game all the time, right? But, look at the score. You see at the half that this nigga missed a 25-yard field goal. And you just are seething at that shit. Looking back at it. Because there's just no way. That would have changed a lot. Nevertheless, you couldn't go back and reverse that. You had to do this right here and right now. They didn't. And that would end the game, giving Iowa State a 20-17 win at TCU. It was definitely a defensive slugfest for the ages in the Big 12. Crazy to say that. You rarely see it, but man, it's something to behold when you do. For the numbers, TCU has got to be disappointed with themselves, just overall at this. Because the odd test doesn't even do it complete justice. They rattled this man Rocco Beck. And to do that to him while holding him to, I kid you not, 37.5% completion on 9 of 24 passes for 111 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions, keeping his yards per attempt under 5 each, and you still lose in such a bone-crushing fashion. Like, the defense did their job. They did their job on that front. And even with Carson Hansen getting 108 yards and a touchdown on the ground, this happened with volume. He wasn't being a world beater in this one. 3.9 yards per carry is okay. It's not really anything too dominant, per se. But in what ended up being a slugfest game, they did lose that battle on the ground from a team perspective. And receivers, again, through drops and through great coverage, especially from Bud Clark out here getting 2 picks. I mean, the leading receiver for them in Seoul had a number of drops himself and 31 yards on 4 catches. Like, that's not that crazy. But it still wasn't enough. So, what does that tell you? As for TCU, Hoover completed 68% of his passes for 319 yards, but also had a touchdown and 2 interceptions. You could question why he threw 50 passes in this game as well. That's a different story. As for their numbers on the ground, Payne had 71 yards and on 8 carries, rather. But again, that fumble, that might have been another play that just completely sealed the deal in this one. And interestingly, Barnes, person who, at least to start out the year with some of what he'd been doing, he'd been their lead guy. And yet, he was held to just 15 rushes for 25 yards. Even Abu Sama III for the Cyclones as a backup man had 30 yards on the ground on nearly half the carries. So that's a little bit interesting as well if you're TCU. Dwyer would have 11 catches for 108 yards and a touchdown, and McAllister would also have 11 receptions for 107 yards. I mean, it's really just an arms race for, I guess, conference title game contention at this point. I don't know if either team right now, when you look at it, because, I mean, we can definitely take a good look at that for a second. Who's to say that either of Iowa State or TCU gets in there at this point? With how the top of the conference is performing, at least, I don't really know if I could say that with confidence for either one. But when you look at it, any number of things is possible. Their playoff chances, there's no doubt about that. They're both unranked at this point, so you could definitely kiss that goodbye. But I guess with some of their next few games, depending on if they face off against one of these one of the better teams in the conference per se, it's safe to say that they're going to want to play spoiler against them. I mean, let me see. Like Iowa State, for example, looking at this, yeah, they don't really face anybody. I mean, they're even on a bye right now, but you got Kansas and Oklahoma State. That ain't nothing to write home about. All right, what about TCU? Ooh, they got BYU. They do have BYU. That's true. That could be interesting. Late game action. That'll be something to tune into. It's not like TCU's a bad team, but they have just had a pretty weird season. If they can get themselves a win there, they got to go to Provo and do it. That could be tough in the late night, but they're certainly going to be motivated to do it. And I mean, like TCU, they're definitely looking for something. Their next 3 games are against the aforementioned BYU. Then they have a game at Houston and at home versus Cincy. All 3 of the top teams in the Big 12 as of the recording of this video. Hey, they got a shot to derail each and every one of those teams' opportunities. And if they can finish out the season that strong, if they can have a few outside factors go their way, because you got to consider conference record, who knows? Like, those teams are literally 2, 3, and 4 in the conference at this point. I don't know how likely it is for all of them to drop just enough games. But if you get the head-to-head record against them and they drop and you have the advantage in conference record, because that's going to count, TCU has an outside shot at the very best. But they do not have a large margin for error. They got to run the table. That still may not be enough for them, but they got to run the table. They don't have a choice, especially with them losing this game to Iowa State. And again, what sucks the most is that it was winnable. It was certainly winnable. It's not like Iowa State was beating the world. But they let the game slip right out of their hands. That has got to be the worst feeling in the world. All right. Moving on to LSU. Let me get down here real quick. Moving on to LSU at, I believe, at number 4 Alabama. Just want to get my stuff right there. Okay. Well, Brian Kelly's gone. We knew this entering the game. I don't know if him being there would have really helped LSU at all or not. But this is a team that was certainly still reeling. At the very least, some of their core guys were definitely trying to keep a motivated tone about this one. Like one of the Weeks brothers, yes, a team of brothers named Weeks at the linebacker positions. The other one, I think it was, because I'm pretty sure Witt's out. I don't want to get this mixed up with this. So I think Witt's out right now. And I think Wes said this. They have nothing to lose as a team. So it definitely makes them dangerous against Alabama, essentially. And they just got to go out and show it, right? I'm not going to lie to you. Like, from that perspective, again, if Alabama, and again, granted, since that Florida State game, they had been rolling. But again, Not to be an SEC homer because it's Big Ten all the way. But here's the fundamental thing you have to understand. Even if you're facing off against an SEC team that looks weaker, when you get in the heat of fucking conference competition, there are no off weeks. There are no off weeks in SEC football when you are having these head-to-head matchups like this. If Alabama fucked around and slipped up at any one moment of time in this game, it could have proven very detrimental to their success. And it could have given LSU a tremendous opportunity to pounce on it. Literally, they are the Tigers. And take full advantage of the opportunity in front of them. Like, those are not things you want to fuck around and do, especially in Alabama's position. And I mean, hey, in the case of LSU, you had Wes Weeks come out and say all this stuff, of course, but you gotta mean it. The very first drive saw Alabama get bold, go for it on 4th and short, and he fucking rocked the shit out of Jan Miller in the backfield. That has some extra fucking emphasis. And if that's how you're coming out and you're starting out the game as a defense, that's already putting you in that mode. Even while they're at Alabama, at Nick Saban, at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Hey, bro. Like, that couldn't have been any better of a start for the defensive side of the ball in that case. But again, you have to be opportunistic in those situations. If you're getting favorable spots like that, you have got to compound on those opportunities with scoring. No matter how you do it, just get on the board. Establish momentum early, keep up the defensive intensity, and you could put Alabama in a bit of a hole. So promptly, LSU's first 2 drives saw them get down the field. Fair enough. They were making some good progress. You actually saw Nick Anderson. Man, let me tell you, that is a name that has been so underheard over the past few weeks. I don't know what happened. Yes, it's been a little rough for LSU. But this man, Nick Anderson, transferred from Oklahoma expecting to have a field day with this team. It has just, or at least over the past few weeks, not a hardcore LSU guy, not watching every single LSU game. Well, but man, that's legitimately got to be one of the first catches I've seen him get in a game that I've watched in a long time. It was legitimately like that. Nonetheless, it helped them continue to move the ball down the field, right? And yet, with Nussmeier trying to run for some reason, okay, in a situation where you need to score, you have a 30-yard field goal deep in Alabama territory, and Ramos whiffs on the fucking kick. But it gets better because the next drive would see them with Hill Green making a tremendous play in space on what would have been a first down. Granted, he punched it out and got Alabama the ball back right outside of LSU's red zone on the very next possession. That could have been fatal for this Tigers team in any other situation. They were just so lucky that their defense was standing on what the hell they were talking about. They were truly willing to do that. I mean, outside of one Ty Simpson pass on one of these drives after the missed field goal, that just completely burn them for 33 yards down the field. I don't know how they let him get that wide open, by the way. But nevertheless, they forced 3 straight incompletions there, forced a 3-and-out. And when it came to them being right near LSU's red zone, how about not even allowing Alabama to get in the red zone, making them lose yards and forcing them to kick a deeper field goal? Now, they got it. They got on the board. But, hey, to be down by just 3 in that situation compared to allowing a free touchdown or being down by multiple possessions, that is definitely a win for the overall defense. And at the very least, hey, offense understood the assignment a little bit. I don't know how Berrien Brown continues to halt in some of these catches, by the way. It's crazy. The man is 5'11". I'm told he's a speedster. He just manages to reel in some of the tougher catches. And, if he can do that at that time, it definitely makes him more of a threat. But it's unexpected to me. Nevertheless, Barry as well, to take, I guess, a little bit of heat off Durham, he managed to get in a pretty good fucking run here for a 37-yard gain. All of a sudden, LSU's cooking. And while they do stall out, hey, Ramos made the field goal this time. So they tie up the game there. And it was really just from there, their defense, they were still stout at times, but they started to have a little bit of a struggle going on. They did. They allowed Cuevas to just completely sneak behind the defense on a wheel route over to the left side of the field and got a free 32-yard gain from there. And then Hill Jr., the other running back behind Miller, managed to get in for a touchdown run to give Alabama a 10-3 lead. Would it have helped for LSU to respond immediately? Yes. But it was not going to be that easy. Once they got Barry behind schedule and forced 3rd and 13, there's very minimal chance for them to do much of anything there. And they went 3-0. Luckily for them, again, despite another chunk play to Bernard, just gashing up this defense. At the very least, Tulty himself wanted to engage in a little missed kick action as well. Again, how the fuck do you miss a 26-yard field goal? I don't care if you're kicking from an angle. I don't know. I don't. But it happened. And that would have been a grand opportunity for the Tigers to do something. They would not. Again, like I said, there were multiple slip-ups at this point already that I've outlined for Alabama. And yet, at very few moments did the Tigers end up responding. They managed to put up some good resistance. But if you are not having anything to show for it, for the most part, you're not going to be able to overcome that kind of competition. And to make matters even worse, they allowed the Waddle clone to get going. Yes, the Waddle clone in the slot dialed up a post route. They didn't want to press him up, and they made a brutal mistake. As soon as he's about to make the cut for the route, cornerback's already out of position, and Ty Simpson uncorks a fucking dime. Threw that shit on a rope down the field. Brooks hold it in. And this is all going on with them starting off this drive at just 56 seconds. They are hustling. They are moving down the field as motivated as ever. In the very next play, fuck a drop problem. When you're as good as Ryan Williams is, you're going to find a way to make plays regardless. Man did a great job of high-pointing the pass in the end zone between multiple defenders in a tight window. And despite taking a hit, held onto the ball strong for a touchdown catch to make it a 17-3 ball game. Then this second half for LSU got a little interesting. As if it wasn't bad enough that they were already down, it hurt even worse that while they would get a field goal, they started to lose some key contributors. I mean, Nick Anderson, for crying out loud, literally got a good catch on this route, and he got in a good throw from Nussmeier. Yet, as soon as that happened, the man, you can see him grabbing at his knee and grimacing in pain on the ground. He gets taken out, and he doesn't return to the game at all. Then, you eventually have Nussmeier move down the field, and he eventually gets sacked by Pierre, who would be all over the place in this game, and credit to him. He was definitely a force in this one. While they would get the field goal, and while they themselves would keep Alabama's offense completely limited for the rest of the second half, they also lost Nussmeier on that very same sack. He got injured in some capacity, and before you knew it, they had to roll out former Mississippi State quarterback Martin Van Buren Jr. Or Michael Van Buren Jr. Jeez, that's crazy. But yeah, and you're mentioning that this guy was a former quarterback at Mississippi State. We know how rough it's been for Mississippi State for the past few years. They were legitimately one of the worst teams in the conference last year, I believe, with him at the helm. So, while he definitely displayed some of his running prowess in this game, as soon as Nussmeier went out, no matter what it is you want to say about him, they might not have stood much of a chance as soon as he went out of that game. I'm sorry. And you could feel that as an LSU team. I mean, it's not like they were still yet another game where I'm just like, it's gotta suck for the defensive unit. Because to their credit, despite all that shit, they played their hearts out to the very end. I mean, they literally opened up the fourth quarter, forcing a fumble with none other than Harold Perkins Jr. getting in the backfield, wrecking his whole intent in terms of Todd Simpson here. Forcing the ball out of his hands, getting it right back, and getting them in great field position. And at that point, even if you would like to see touchdowns come out of these drives, because again, 3 points is not greater than 7, of course, they would still do enough to get on the board, and despite Overton forcing another negative play with a sack on Van Buren Jr. here, Ramos would get another 37-yard field goal in, and it was a single possession ball game. They had a shot. Like I said, no matter what you have to say about this LSU team, if you think they are as truly talented as they were projected to be, then having some of their core guys go out, and even with being in such a great position, relying on backup talent to do the job is definitely a grand risk. And when you look at the outcome of this game, again, defense did their thing. All they did was allow a field goal for the rest of the game. And that was it. But there's something to be said about this offense being so inept to the point where you not only go 3 and out in a situation where you had a chance to at least tie the game or get on the board again, and then to cap things off, knowing that you have to at least score to keep the game alive, you have Pierre get in the backfield for a sack fumble. And just like that, Alabama was able to get the ball back and win this game 20-9. Again, just incredibly unfortunate stuff for their defense. But when you lose major players like that and you're already entering the game with your backs against the wall, it's just, I mean, what is there to really say? Like, tough. But at least for Alabama, they can say that they won a tough one. Todd Simpson in this game completed 60% of his passes for 277 yards and a touchdown. Like, LSU, again, handled their business. They literally held Alabama to 59 rushing yards, not only as a team, but also amongst 7 different rushers. And all at just 2.6 yards a pop. Too bad for LSU. They didn't do that much better on their end in the rushing attack. But in this ground out game, even when it seemed like Alabama had control with some of their bigger plays, and with them having a 14-point lead, I might add, when it came down to it, they got down the stretch, and maybe they wanted to rely on the rushing attack a little bit more. No, not with that kind of effort being put in on the defensive end. They couldn't just play as conservative as they wanted to. No, they were gashing in the passing game a little bit, but make them keep throwing the ball. Force Todd Simpson into making a terrible decision. And while that did happen, that didn't necessarily lead to takeaways. The man still has an interception on the season. A single interception. Insane work. Like, again, all respect to him, and yes, we know that there are definitely some good candidates for Heisman right now. Between Cyan, Mendoza, and Simpson. He's up there. He's definitely up there. Like, you can't disregard that. Jeremy Bernard would have 3 receptions for 79 yards. Brooks would have 4 receptions for 67 yards. Josh Cuevas would have 4 receptions for 58 yards. And Ryan Williams would have 3 receptions for 33 yards and the aforementioned touchdown. As for the Tigers, Nussmeier actually did somewhat okay while he was playing. And again, can't really play the revisionist history game. Things could have been a little different if he was available, but again, you just really don't know. Nevertheless, 121 yards on 85.7% completion percentage. With how he was being played, that's not terrible. It's not. Would you want it a little more? Yeah. But all they needed was just one more thing to go right. And it just felt like at every moment that wasn't going to happen. Barry had 66 yards on 12 carries. And for their receivers, Thomas had 5 receptions for 49 yards. Brown had 5 receptions for 44 yards. And Anderson had 2 receptions for 32 yards as well. Also in this game, I think Tre'Davious Green, he was just pissed off about something and wanted to start jawing at the fucking Alabama defense. And I'm like, okay, if you showed that fight earlier, this would, you'd probably have an even better chance than you already did. Why are you trying to bark at them now when the game's done? Doesn't really make any sense to me, but do with that what you will. LSU's definitely been through a lot. I'm sure that they would just want to find some kind of way to finish off the season as strong as they can. Because, again, to know that for at least a good portion of this game, you had Alabama in check and you don't take advantage of it, That's just devastating. Truthfully speaking. As for this game right here, Navy at number 10 Notre Dame, also in the nighttime slot on NBC because NBC gets all the Notre Dame action, right? I think this game above all else. Oh my goodness. We just got to put a few different things into perspective before I even get into the flow of the game. Okay? They put a graphic up early that showed that Blake Horvath, who actually didn't play in this game, he was injured, but his 142.9 passing yards per game this season was the most for a Navy quarterback since 1994. 1994. And we talking just 142.9 passing yards per game. Like, it don't get more Navy triple option football than that. It really doesn't. And it's just crazy. Like, both of these teams were definitely going to be battling out in the run game. There's no question about that. That is undeniably Navy's core strength. It's all they fucking do. Okay? It's all they do as a team. And if you're Notre Dame, if you're those trench guys, you're going to see it coming. But the way that the run game gets utilized in, honestly, majority college action, majority of pro action, even if you know that a team's going to run the football, they're going to do a number of different things they can to dress it up. Line up in passing formations to run, of course. Get a few different motions going to take certain backers or certain key guys out of the play completely to open up different lanes for a running back. Things of that nature. You saw a lot of that going on with Navy just getting in these elaborate sets, continuing to swing different players around, continuing to pull out all the stops when it comes to these option plays. And like one of these plays right here, for example, like they tried an option. They really did. And one of the Notre Dame players promptly popped the shit out of the rusher from Navy. Like, I mean, damn. They tried similar things at a different point, and yet again, you had a different player on this Notre Dame defense not only get Woodson, the quarterback who will play in this game, tackled, he tackled fucking Texas at the same time. The fullback, running back, whatever you want to classify him as. He is literally wearing the number 46. So, all that happened. Meanwhile, Notre Dame as well, typically, again, similar team in that you know that they are going to want to run the ball and run it through Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. Lethal running back combination. Like, there's no denying that. They will typically just beef up their offensive line. They're like, they don't completely stray away from doing some of the more elaborate stuff, but they're like, fuck all that. We're playing old school smash mouth football. It's been their identity since they've been a football program. We can go all the way back to Newt Rockne. We can go all the way back to Lou Holtz. It's what they do as a program. That is something about them that is never going to change. And it simply hasn't under Marcus Freeman. But it just so happens that this team has one clear advantage. Okay? When they need to throw the football, they have a quarterback. And they can certainly throw the football. Because even with them being a run-centric team, they get a shit ton of explosive plays. And virtually, it took them no time to make that happen. I mean, the first drive went about as you'd expect for Navy. They punted. They got clamped up by the Notre Dame defense. Back-to-back plays saw Jeremiah Love get out of the backfield with virtually no one guarding him, getting a 27-yard catch. And then you had Malachi Fields get over the top of the defense and moss a defender down the field for a 52-yard gain. Just like that, they were in the Navy red zone, and it was the Jeremiah Love show from there. Because of course it is. Are you really surprised by that? I mean, they had graphics going out through this whole drive stating that C.J. Carr, a redshirt freshman, is, at that time, the fourth highest leader in the nation in terms of yards per completion. And it's also the highest mark, 14.3, for a Notre Dame quarterback since 1999. But that's the quarterback you wanted to give those kinds of throws to? It was going to be a long night if that was going to happen. This Woodson guy can certainly run his ass off. I'll give him that. Like, there were a few moments he just, even with them seeing the run coming, he was able to work that Notre Dame defense a few good times himself on the ground. I mean, he was getting some big gains in every now and then. But I think the real story here is that Eli Heidenreich, man who literally had over 200 yards and 3 touchdown catches, if you can believe that, a few weeks ago, managed to get 1,000 career rushing yards on the ground in this game with one of his earlier runs. So that was pretty cool to see. And I think on that same drive, you have Woodson get a touchdown run here to make this a 7-all game. You thought that was going to last forever? Okay. They grind down the field yet again with Malachi Fields getting active and also having Jadarian Price punching in for a 2-yard touchdown run. Forced a 3 and out. Again, getting right in the faces of these damn rushers. Pretty much every person at the skill position on the Navy squad, on the Army squad, on Georgia Tech squad, in some way, shape, or form, they're going to ask you to run the football. You do realize that, right? They're going to ask you to run the football. They're going to ask you to block. That's a given. But they said, again, forget all that. You're not going to run that same old entire game on us. We're going to get your asses out of here. And in a short time, that's what they would do with Jordan Faison being just a tremendous fucking athlete. I mean, again, they tell you the man is literally out here getting major accomplishments as a lacrosse player for Notre Dame. Happens to be a damn good football player too, and an elusive one. Just getting in for a 5-yard touchdown catch. Having to do a little extra work for it, but it's nothing for him. Again, this long run from Woodson, 41-yard gain for him was impressive. And he was definitely toting the rock a little bit. He also managed to get a pretty decent pass to Heidenreich after Heidenreich, again, being somewhat of a receiving threat at this point, managed to drop one earlier in the game. I didn't really understand how that worked. But, I mean, Navy would get on the board, and it was an 11-point ball game. I mean, they had a shot, right? No, don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to yourself. Why would you really believe that they had a chance in this when all Notre Dame proceeded to do was put up 21 points in the third quarter and score on every single one of their drives. Jeremiah Love is legitimately a beast. As soon as he got in for this touchdown run, I want you to understand this, okay? The man was definitely tackled earlier in the play. He was supposed to be down. He already managed to get a fucking spin off of an incoming defender out of the backfield, okay? He already managed to do that. Gets in space, runs outside a little bit, and gets tackled. But he never goes down. He bounces right up off a defender, keeping his balance and getting all the way down the field for a 48-yard touchdown run. And at that point, I knew it was over. It was over. With that touchdown run, Jeremiah Love would become one of two Notre Dame running backs, along with, I think, Brian Pinkett, if I'm mistaken. You check this. But along with Pinkett, he'd be one of two to post back-to-back 15 touchdown seasons as a Notre Dame rusher. Now, let me just make sure I got the name. Alan Pinkett. Okay. That's some tremendous history to be a part of. And it just continued to get worse from there. It continued to get worse from there. Because they already forced a turnover on downs. And then you had Notre Dame players who I don't even think have gotten enough reps like that getting scores. I've never seen KK Smith take the field for Notre Dame before this. That man just flew right down the field over top of the defense. And CJ Carr just delivered an absolute heater to him for a 34-yard touchdown catch. And to cap it all off, you had this Washington guy get in from a 4-yard touchdown catch as well. Before you knew it, it was 42-10. All Notre Dame at this point. They weren't done. They were not done. They had enough of Jeremiah Love. So, you know what? They're going to give the ball to this other guy. Oh, yeah, they still have Aeneas Williams. This is him. Okay. Man who had rarely gotten touches this season. He's been with the team. But with the strength of those two running backs, he's not going to see a lot of action. He just walks right in on 4th and 3, mind you. And scores a 54-yard touchdown run. They also got deep into Navy territory with the backup. And they were damn near trying to score again. If not for them just taking it easy on them, having a little mercy, and taking some knees to close out the deal. And win 49-10. Essentially, they both ran the ball very well as teams. But even in that core strength, even in that common one between the both of these two teams, there are levels to this shit. And Notre Dame ran laps around them throughout this entire match. They had no answer whatsoever. And again, with CJ Carr being able to balance things out and keeping them honest as a defense, it did everything for them. Mind you, when you look at the disparity of total yards here, I don't know about net yards, but all I know is this. You look at that, and Carr had the team as a whole, had 253 passing yards, I should say. They also ran for 249, although it says 252 on the actual box score. Maybe something changed in post. It doesn't get more balanced than that. And CJ Carr was also super efficient. Again, these weren't just check down throws. The man was firing missiles down the field. And he still retained 81.2% completion for 218 yards and had as many touchdowns, 3, as incompletions in this game. Truly a great performance for the young lad. And again, when you have a team that can run the ball that well, it always helps. I mean, Jeremiah Love had 13 rushes for 94 yards by himself and 2 scores. She also had Williams with 72 yards and the aforementioned touchdown run, while Price also chipped in 47 yards on an efficient 4.7 yards per carry and had a touchdown as well. All throughout, even Minchie got a 13-yard run. And then for the receiving game, because that's the only receiving you're going to get, Fields had 97 receiving yards on 4 catches. Smith, KK Smith, had 2 receptions for 39 yards. And Will Poling, the 5th, had 2 receptions for 29 yards in this game. Think about that for a second. Yeah, Malachi Fields is definitely their big play threat. That's why he transferred from Virginia in the first place. But when you have guys in Poling, who again, Poling, the 5th, had just recently begun to find his stride. He'd been struggling for a majority of the season before then to really even get any attention at all. And again, Smith hadn't even been playing all that much, yet they round out the top 3 in terms of wide receiver contributions. Like, that's insane. So Notre Dame in this, they are very much, even if, the jury's still out on them potentially playing, I guess, truly competitive competition, if they're rolling like this, who's to say they won't win out and earn themselves a spot in the CFP again, if that's how they're performing? And it can be a little frustrating as well. It's like, you know that they can do this if you are a Notre Dame fan, and yet at the same time, those losses to Miami and Texas A&M, which again, Texas A&M seems fair, given how they've retained their perfection this season. But those are just tough ones to drop early. But hey, if you can get it back and get laser focused at pivotal moments, that's something they could be able to overcome. Who knows? And I mean, hey, even with that last season, you know how far they got. So, like, they're just not a team, even if people want to keep coming at them for not being a part of a fucking conference. They are not a team that you can't sleep on them. You just can't. And they're going to make sure that you don't. As for Navy, you knew they couldn't throw the ball. Can you be surprised at what they did in this game? Can you really be surprised by that? 3 of 10 for 22 yards. You can't be shocked at that. This is what they do. That's how they roll. I mean, they're 7-2. They were 7-2. They were actually undefeated. They were undefeated doing this. It might work in those situations, but when you're going up against powerhouse teams like that and expecting this to go down, it's just not going to happen. Like, Notre Dame has a propensity to do this. I mean, they did the same shit to Army. They consistently do the same shit to Army. Surely, you're not really going to change your identity like that. But I mean, damn, like, maybe every now and then, if you are going to consistently have this independent squad kick your ass, you want to start maybe trying to battle back and win a few of these. in some different ways, right? I would think so, but that's just me. They definitely, again, did most of their work on the ground. 45 combined rushes for 206 yards and a touchdown. It's just, man, like, you do want that to get blown up by 39. Jeez, bro. That's kind of crazy. I mean, if anything, they've still got somewhat of an outside chance at, I mean, they could be in group of 5 consideration right now. And their next 2 opponents are against teams who are also very much in contention for the group of 5 spot. They have South Florida at home, and they have Memphis after a bye following that, along with obviously the Army-Navy game. Obviously, that's a year-round thing. I'm not sure that will count towards anything per se. That's just tradition. You can't get into December action and not have an Army-Navy game. Like, it's legitimately the premise. So, there's no surprise there. I don't know. They, too, if they do want to get that automatic bid, even if they win out, I don't know. It feels like they could be a team that gets overlooked just because it's like, oh, man, whatever would people do in a situation where Navy, of all teams, makes an appearance in the CFP? And I can guarantee you right now, I'll bank this, I don't want to be that guy. But them having a home game in this playoff, or one that they would potentially make, per se, would absolutely surprise me. Just to face off against an angry opponent who happens to be a powerhouse on their home turf, going on the road, and you just see them get walloped. So many people will be confused and outraged by that shit. Like, you thought the selection last year was controversial for a few teams, especially the Miami, Florida, and Alabama brass. Yeah, I vividly remember absolutely laying that shit to bed. Because again, last year, for those 2 teams specifically, there was just no shot. There was no shot. They did it to their damn selves, and yet their fans wanted to be that salty. You had all the outrage there. Could you imagine if Navy would get in and go through that kind of shit? Oh, boy, that would be brutal. I'm telling you right now, it would not be fun, man. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.